Welcome to New Mommy at 40, a honest, informative, and non-judgmental podcast for those navigating to and through parenthood in their 40s. Whether you're currently a stay-at-home mom or just curious about the lives of stay-at-home moms, this episode is for you. We're giving you an inside look into the lives of 3 stay-at-home moms with special guests Kendra Dayhoff and Cathryn Bieg, and it's a part 1 of 2 episodes that we'll do about this topic. In this one, we'll chat about transitioning from the workforce and some research of pros and cons, and part 2 is all about resources. But before we get into it, leave a review after you've listened to this episode, and don't forget to follow and subscribe. All right, let's get into it. It didn't happen in my 20s. Who cares? Now I've got all this fancy wisdom to share. Hey, I've got this, baby, you're getting the best of me, 'cause I'm a new mommy at 40. Welcome to this episode. I'm so excited because I've wanted to do a panel like this for a while because it's been something I've had to get used to in being a stay-at-home mom. So I have some fantastic mamas that are joining us today on our panel. We'll start first with Kendra Dayhoff. She is a mama of a 2.5-year-old daughter and 35. And then we have Cathryn Bieg, who is a stay-at-home mom as well, and she has one son who's 2.5 years old. And I wanted you to talk about where did you start from? Like, what did you do prior to be stay-at-home moms, Kendra? What were you doing before?
Sure, I was working as a clinical social worker. So I was essentially working as a therapist, and because it was the pandemic, I was conducting virtual sessions, so on video and on phone. I was working with a practice, and then I ended up actually starting my own practice. So I was doing that more recently, doing that right before I had my daughter.
And I'm assuming even with a private practice, it sounds like you still made the decision to not continue with that? Is that
sure?
Correct?
Yeah, and actually my timeline was a little off. That's like such mommy brain. But yeah, I was actually working for a practice. I continued working for them, and then I transitioned to my own practice while she was alive. But I had been working, I guess, a little bit over a year when I made the decision to stay home and pause work. I had gone through a lot in the first year of her life. I started working I had my maternity leave for about 3 months, and then I worked part-time for about another 3 months. We put her in daycare for 6 months, so that was from when she was 6 months old to a year old, and she got sick so often that it just didn't feel logical to us, and in our partnership, it usually made more sense for me to take time off work instead of my husband. Just the nature of our jobs, and I have more flexibility, so I could do that. So that was difficult. So we got a nanny after that period. So around a year old, we got her a nanny. We did that for about 3 months, and unfortunately, we just had some issues there with just dependability and taking initiative, things like that. And through all of this, there was just a lot going on as a family and adapting to being new parents. That It just kind of got to a point where things were a little bit better with the nanny, but it was still, there were still kinks we were working out. And I felt like if we can figure out how I can stay home, let me try that. That's the one thing we haven't tried. And maybe that will create some more stability for us. So when she was a little bit over a year, almost a year and a half, I started staying home with her.
Wow, you've tried a lot of different things before
definitely.
Finding this rhythm. Kat, you came from the corporate world prior to having your son, and you still are working as a dating and relationship coach, helping women find their feminine power in what they do. And how was that for you? Were you working corporately right up until you had your son and then switched into this new career?
Yes. So I was a regional manager, training manager, I should say. So I managed the trainers for a major cosmetics corporation. And so it was a great cush job. Like I loved what I did creatively. I loved what I did helping artists and helping trainers. Like you're a teacher basically, right? So you're just like the teacher of the teachers. And the company I work for that, you know, you can look up, it's one of those like Fortune 500 kind of a company, but they really take care of you. They had the most generous maternity package that I'd ever heard of from any of my friends. Wow. And still, so I was on maternity leave for 6 months. This was like my job for 18 years. Wow. I was like, that was my life job. Yeah. So I really grew in this company, and I was the corporate warrior, you know, it's like, I just kept getting promoted, and I just kept trying to do my best and getting promoted. And it was like really exciting and magical. And then, you know, later in life, this, you know, baby happens, and like, now you're like, all this, you know, legwork pays off, because now you get this like great perk and benefit. So like 6 months of mat leave, as we all know, this is the timing of, we're all COVID moms. Mm-hmm. So retail business was terrible during that time. And so there were waves of layoffs before I even went on mat leave. And then the day I came back from maternity leave, so Coda, my son, was 6 months old, and I was laid off. Ooh. And so, and you know, it was like through no fault of my own, all that stuff. And so I received this severance package. And so I lived this privileged life for a time where my husband and I were like, we had my income and I wasn't having to be at work. But once that severance package wore out, that's when, you know, it got real. Like, it was like, okay, like I'm really like jobless. And like my husband and I decided that I was going to stay at home with Coda, but it was really dependent on him getting contracting jobs. So he's a game designer. And so he used to own his own studio. He was the business owner, entrepreneur. And now we've like flipped, which is really weird. So like, you know, when Victoria says that I'm a dating and relationship coach, like I just fell into that while I was on mat leave. I was giving friends advice. You know, it's like, you don't have a lot of time, but you do have a lot of time when you have it, right? Yeah. It's like when the baby's asleep, when they're newborn, you're kind of just like twiddling your fingers on social media. And so
let's be honest, we also miss doing something too, right? There's some aspect of that, right? Where you're like, you've been so busy, and now it's like, you should be relaxing, but you're still, that energy is still like, I gotta do something.
Yes. And you are doing things all the time. I think we all know that feeling of like, the more you do, the more you do. Yeah. Right. So when you're so busy with this newborn all the time, your brain is always on fire. It feels like a relaxing thing to like give people advice about dating. I was like, sure. So that's how I just fell into it. And still to this day, it's not my job in that in a financial sense, right? Like my husband's job is my job. And like I said, we flipped where like now I'm learning how to be an entrepreneur and guide myself, and he's now doing more corporate things. And so it's very funny, but me being stay at home was very much dependent on, was he going to go that route, right? And just secure a consistent salary versus going out on his own again and being entrepreneurial. So it's been a complete shift for our entire family and for both of us as partners, more than just it's been a shift for me, which I'm sure is really common for a lot of people who like decide to be stay at home. Sometimes it's not really like a decision. It's that the baby needs care. Right. And so what do you do? And one income in this economy?
It's tough.
You know, that's a big decision.
It is. Yeah. It is. And, you know, for me, I can relate because I was at that point a flight attendant when I met my husband and had Carrie. I was flying all around the world. I was just getting my passport stamped, and and though I knew that once we got pregnant, I felt that going back to flying probably wasn't going to happen. I also started to kind of question humanity a little bit in that job and just wasn't sure I wanted to fly anyway. To be honest, I was looking for other things, and I had dabbled in other roles within the company as a manager. And I thought, man, between managing and teaching, I would love to do that. But both options required either moving to Orlando, which was definitely not in the cards for me, or just, shifting gears, which weren't the going back to a managerial position wasn't available. So I really just, all I had was flying, and I have no family nearby. And that's another thing I think can drive someone's decision is like, who do I have to rely? This was 2019. Boy, I didn't even realize how that was about to be really, really stark, because we were going to be in seclusion for a while. But I made the decision not go back around that. I think it was a month before going back, my plan to was. And the closer the date got, the more anxiety I was having about it. Like, who's going to watch her? What if in coming off of this pandemic, and we were kind of still in it actually, but for the airlines to recover after being shut down essentially for that time, I knew it was going to be crazy. And I didn't want to be in a city and canceled because we don't have pilots, and no one can get in because of, being sick, and being out for 2-3 days and having my husband going, well, I'm working like a 9 to 5. I can't watch her, and not really having anyone to rely on to even trust in that time with COVID, and just wasn't sure how that was going to work. And I just remember going, I don't think I can do this. And my husband, in a way, kind of let me know that he was actually hoping I'd say that, but he was never going to suggest it. He was like, as long as you made that decision. It's like, yes, I made that decision. I really don't. And like, can we do this? Because it requires, both people to be on board, especially when you're relying on someone's, income at that point, which was a new thing for me. And we'll talk about that, what that's like to come from these, these roles that we each had, and kind of being dependent on your partner financially for your entire family, and even your own, extracurricular activities or whatever that might be. So yeah, that was how I ended up being a stay-at-home. But I remember when I did so, I remember thinking, this is a little different than I thought stay-at-home, what that role was. Which brings me to the question of, what did we think a stay-at-home mom was? What did we think the experience was going to be like? Is it similar to what you thought, or very, very different? Let's start with Kat.
Yeah. So back when I became a stay-at-home mom, which was, I don't know, not that long ago, like a year ago, I think I thought a lot of what, not to be weird, but I think I thought what men thought, and comedian men joke about, where they just say that it's like this cush job, and must be nice and all this stuff. And I think that now what's commonly known, and we see it everywhere on social media, is that there are many jobs that make up the stay-at-home mom job.
Yeah.
And so they seem very task oriented, right? And so when it comes to the levels of this job, I think that I thought it would be as easy as my corporate job, at least, or at least I would have mastered it, because I'm already I'm 2.5 years in, and I still don't feel like things are running like a well-oiled machine. Yeah. You guys are laughing, so I feel like the feeling. I feel not alone.
Yes.
Yeah,
we agree.
It's like, yeah. And so you go through many processes in your mind of what this means to what you're bringing to this role. Because I don't know about you, but me and all my friends that are moms now, I've never really been bad at a job. And I do sometimes go through the mental load of am I just really bad at this job? And I think I attribute that to a few things. So I really think that being children of the women who came out of the modern women's rights movement, right? We had stay-at-home moms that were probably the example that I think still a lot of women are living that example, where that woman does all the jobs: the cook, the chef, the cleaner, the caretaker of the children, and multiple children, right? I think we've seen that, and we've seen what a toll it's taken on those women and our parents, but our moms. But what's normalized for us now is we've seen that. We thought somehow that was like the template. We also know it's not easy, but then we grow up still for some reason thinking it's not as hard as our corporate jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like harder. It's like 10 times harder because there's the layers of like all those jobs plus all those jobs being a layer in itself. And like you feeling really the weight of it. And like, I think that I'm now experiencing this understanding that what I used to think is like menial tasks or were just like a weekend activity when I was a corporate woman living by myself, right? And taking care of myself. They're now my whole life. And it is a huge way that I add value to my family and I'm able to support my family. And I used to just think what my husband does, and he does those things too. Like he has to do the tasks, otherwise the house doesn't run, right? So like I used to think though, like making the paycheck was support and stability. And that's what I thought when I was single, because that's what it was. And now my whole definitions of support and stability are completely flipped. And I hope this is the future for all the future generations. I'll certainly be teaching my son and any other children we have that like, what, just because the world doesn't value those roles and those tasks doesn't make them less important. It means that our mindset needs to shift so that we actually value those things and then value ourselves and what we bring to the role. So like to kind of bring it like full circle, like the reason why like I brought up that like I think I thought like men of like maybe it's even olden times now, I hope, right? But like that's not that hard of a job. It sounds like fun or whatever. Like I've completely had a mind shift to that's so important. And there's so much understanding lost of what that role needs to be or should be, that you do need the help. There's so much help that you need. And, you know, you need your village and you need your daycare and you need all these things. Like childcare is only one portion of my job. And because I also want to pursue a passion like my coaching, we're outsourcing the childcare, but that just gives me more time to do the other stuff, to make sure the laundry gets done so we have clean clothes for work or for playtime or school or whatever. So yeah, it's like, it's not an accumulation of those tasks that I used to think it was. It's really so important and valuable.
Absolutely. I completely concur on so many of the points that you said. And I was thinking too about when the guilt sometimes comes in this job of, is it hard because I'm just trying to do too much? Like, am I being an overachiever? Like maybe I should not have any outside, like when do I get to do something that makes me fulfilled? And is that taking away from my child's experience? It would be easier if I let one thing go. Like, what could that be? I don't know how you feel, Kendra. How was that like for you? Like what did you think this was going to be like for you, the stay-at-home role? And what is it now in comparison?
Sure. I feel like I had no idea what it would be like. I had this vision in my head that it was moms sitting at home watching TV and doing what they wanted to do, which like really makes no sense. I don't even know where I got that. Like just like having fun with their kids and like you don't have to work, like you don't have to worry about work stress and going into a job and like just a completely different, fun, relaxed life. And it's not that. Definitely. And I used to have this like idea that also doesn't make sense now, that it was like women that just didn't feel like working anymore. Like it really just doesn't, I don't know where I got that either. But it's a job. There's a lot of tasks involved, like I was talking about, and they kind of take over the whole day, and they are very valuable. And they keep the household running because things can kind of fall apart if you don't stay on top of certain things. And it's very like emotionally and physically demanding. I actually spoke to a stay-at-home mom right before I transitioned to being full-time at home with my daughter, and she told me it was the most exhausting job she had ever had. And I think I was hoping that she was exaggerating, but now I really understand. I was like, she's just like trying to scare me. Like, there's no way.
It's the most exhausting 10 jobs I've ever had.
Exactly. Yeah, there's more than one job, definitely. Yeah, I think just as a therapist, as someone that was putting a lot of mental energy into her job before, like I never thought anything else would feel that way. But yeah, you're with a little human and they have a lot of feelings and they don't know how to cope with those feelings and they have tantrums and they just start crying sometimes and they just are trying to tell you something and they can't. And there's a lot of like interpreting and like just nurturing and just kind of bonding in that way with them, which takes a lot of energy. And trying to understand what's even happening with them sometimes. And then just physically, even just like every time you have to pick them up, every time you have to like do anything with them. Like, from a lot of the first 2 years or a year and a half, like a lot of picking them up and moving them different places and putting them into car seats and taking them out of car seats and all of that is a lot sometimes. So yeah, no, it's demanding in a lot of different ways and it is valuable. I never realized how much it could change our dynamic as a family and the kind of support that it could bring to us too. Yeah, no, I literally feel like I had no idea what it would be like. And it's been like a real learning experience and kind of a steep learning curve at the beginning.
Yeah, me too.
Yes.
I feel like I almost wanted to like seek out any stay-at-home moms I knew before and say, "Are you okay?"
Yeah, I feel like I should have been checking
I'm so
in on
sorry. I was that friend that
more.
never asked. I never came by.
Yeah.
I know I told you at the baby shower that I would be there for you and help you. I didn't. You really did need that, didn't you?
Yeah.
Because
a lot of empathy now.
yeah, a lot. And, you know, I don't know where, it would be interesting to do like a survey from people to see where their idea of what this job, where that comes from. Because you bring up a really good point, Kat, that maybe it's this male, maybe it's a patriarchal thing where that came from. But I too did feel like it was going to be more relaxed. Like this idea of time seemed endless. Like,
Yes.
I look at all the time I get to spend with my kid and I have time to do so many things. Oh, I can't wait to I'm going to schedule our day and we're going to do all these fun things. And then we're going to be so tired at the end of the day. We both sleep. And it's like, no, I'm like trying to not take naps during the time I'm supposed to watch my kid because my kid's not sleepy. But I will say something you mentioned, Kendra, about there's that fun time and relaxed. I find that I am having more fun than I thought I would now. Like when we're on the brink of me like really settling into this role, it started to not really I would not have described it all the time as fun, especially after that newborn stage. Then I started having fun, but then relax was like a whole that wasn't an existence in the universe of stay at home at all. But some of the points that you both mentioned someone would say falls under the umbrella of motherhood, parenthood, period. Why do you think it's so intense as a stay-at-home mom? What is that? Why is it so much more intense in this role? Because someone who's listening to this as a mom is like, okay, so I have to put them in and out of the car all the time. And I don't have the choice of staying home and I still feel tired from my job. Why do you think? How would you explain that to somebody listening? Any of you?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is that you are doing it on your own. At least for me, there's no other adults around unless I go to the park or I set up a play date with someone. So it's just you and your kid all day long sometimes. There's no one else to get advice from about like how should we do this right now or what should we do right now. So there's a lot of responsibility, I think, about just routine and just all of your child's needs. And yeah, I think it feels like everything in those moments when it's just you and your kids, everything falls on you. And it's like you want to make the most of that time. You want to take that responsibility seriously. You want to feel proud of what you're doing and make sure that your kid is healthy and happy. And like a lot to put on one person, especially if it's just you alone with your kid most of the time.
Yeah. Because I often think to describe it to someone too, it's kind of like, well, think about what you're getting out of your daycare, right? You're getting more than one adult that's like watching your kid. And from 9 to when you drop them off to like 5 or you pick them up, they have activities planned for them. And it's a team handling it. So now take that one person out. And even if it's one kid, it's just that one adult providing education, food, amusement, all of that is just one person. And then you still have to be a partner to your partner. Yeah. So then you have someone else that is relying on you and that, you have promised to be there for as their person. So it's usually, I think the best thing is to, I think the difficulty is, when do you replenish your cup?
Yes.
Would you say, Kat? Like,
oh yeah, I think that like to describe this job to anyone, like to describe this to the old me, right? Is that what you're saying? Yes. Or like to any women out there that are like, haven't embraced motherhood yet and much less like tried out stay-at-home momming. I don't know if anyone could have ever explained to me the lack of mental freedom you have when your child, not a child, honestly, we've all been around children, but like when your child who came out of your body, or even if they didn't come out of your body, that's just your child that you're responsible for caretaking, like that mental load and the lack of mental freedom to just like, oh, I just had a moment to myself mentally. If that equals someone's, like safety and well-being every second of their lives, it's like that just doesn't exist in a way I can think of at all. Like all day long, right? Yeah. All day long. I would imagine it's really similar to like a surgeon performing surgery. Like you have to be present 100% of the time. It's such a gift to be able to be present. It's like you're meditating, right? On that, like you have to be present 100% of the time because their life depends on it. But, and some surgeons know this feeling when their surgeries are like, I hear about these surgeries that are like hours and hours and hours and hours long. And I'm just like, I don't even know how you have a job like that. And then now I feel like it's not surgery, but at the same time, it's like the feeling is the same. I mean, I don't know from their perspective. I mean, the feeling to me in my mind is like, it's the same. The feeling is just as heavy, even if the circumstances aren't exactly the same, because you just can't change the fact that your brain knows that you're responsible for that child's safety. Your brain knows that the same way that I'm sure that surgeon's brain knows that he's responsible for this person, And so I don't mean to compare this job to that job, but I mean like, that's what I can imagine is that your brain has accepted that fact and it puts a certain amount of pressure on you. And everyone's pressure is different depending on how seriously they take that. And apparently I take that very seriously because I'm like torturing myself every day. Yes. And that seems to be the consensus amongst all the stay-at-home moms that I talk to, because those times when you are alone, whether your partner works 8 hours or 16 hours or whatever, like the time you're alone with your child, it really does just feel like so much is riding on you. Yeah. And you can't afford to not be present for a second.
Yeah. And then there's also the other aspect, and I want to bring this in too, because I looked this up to find some interesting facts about pros and cons about stay-at-home moms. This is through verywellhealth.com. Thank you very much. Here are the cons, since we're talking about the cons, and we want to give people the pros too, because there are obviously some amazing aspects to being present this much, for our children. Yeah. But let's talk about some cons. So let's see if any of these ring home. So parents often desire to go back to work. That's one con. Parents may have higher levels of sadness, depression, and anger. Social isolation for the parent. And loss of income. Does any of these kind of feel like things that you had to kind of rationalize for yourself or go through in adjusting to being a stay-at-home mom?
Definitely. I think that, yeah.
No, go ahead. I wasn't sure if someone was thinking about it, so I was going to jump in and...
Sure. Yeah, I was thinking about the isolation at the beginning. I'm an introvert and I love my alone time. I love just being at home and relaxing. And I thought I would really enjoy doing that all the time, just being alone with my daughter and doing things at home with her. And I didn't worry too much about how often we saw other people. And after a few days of that, or even a week of that, we would go out, but maybe we wouldn't actually talk to anyone else. I was starting to feel very lonely and very isolated and a little stir crazy. So I think that was something I had to learn how to cope with. And I really learned the value of connecting with other moms and, just going to activities and classes with her so we could be around other parents. I think that was one of the biggest struggles at first. We have a lot of time, and if I don't make certain plans, that will be us being alone all day. So trying to fit in socialization for me and for her.
Yeah. For me,
tell me the first two again.
Yeah, I'll be happy to. It was parents often desire to go back to work, and parents may have higher levels of sadness, depression, and anger. I see what they mean about anger. Yes, there are times that I get angry at my kid because it's the tantrums. And then I have to say, I give myself credit for usually every time in those moments, there's a time where I say, she's doing exactly what she's supposed to do. Calm down. It's because I come from a background of corporal punishment and where everything was a smack, 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 smack. And I learned from that, but I also was a very sensitive kid, and that really made me go, why am I never good enough? Why can't I ever just I'm always doing something. What am I doing wrong? And I adopted sorry all the time. I was always that kid saying sorry for everything. With that said, it's not that I don't. I've smacked her twice, on the hand, really a tap, tap. And enough where I gauge how that feels on her hand. And each time I've done that, like I said, twice, it's been it's destroyed me. I feel oh, I didn't want to do that. And we have the discussion, and I do the other half of what I never received as a kid, which is the conversation of I'm really sorry I did that. I'm sorry that I had to do that. Let me tell you why. Do you know why? And if she answers yes, and I know this sounds a lot for a 3-year-old, but she does. She's because I did that. Yeah. And I asked you several times, but I don't want to do that. And I'm sorry. So I'm doing my best to kind of avoid it. But I do feel I think it's because we're together so long. I think there are days where it feels we've done this is Groundhog's Day tomorrow. We've done this.
Oh yeah, you're repeating a lot of things over and over.
I'm this
even all day long.
Yeah, I'm this was yesterday. This is the same thing. But then I go, she's 3. She's 3. She's 3. Yeah. She has no concept of time. She doesn't know her days of the week. She doesn't know how much time. When you say we've got 2 hours to get there, it means absolutely nothing to her. But I do feel that the challenge for me was understanding that my lack of time and her reality of time are so different that even if the same thing is being repeated every day, that's her learning. She's like learning. That's just, you know, her brain is like processing something and learning and adapting. And I have to really dig deep in making sure I'm patient. So I feel like that was an adjustment for me too, of combating where I've come from in terms of my background and how my parents dealt with me, and then also not taking it out on her that it's feeling mundane, like trying to, and so that really made me dig deep in trying to find more activities to get us out of the house. And I think that was when I started to think, I think it might be time for like some type of day program, even if it's 2 hours, 2 days a week, maybe that would be great. You know, the other thing for me was, the loss of income was huge. I've been working since I was 16, 15 years old. I very rarely have had to ask for help from people. So to be the dynamic of that in my marriage was very interesting, because I came in having a job and then now I wasn't working, and just kind of adjusting to having to even have that discussion of like, how are we going to handle money? Are you depositing something every month? Are we sharing this card? Like, just having that was was a power struggle for me. It really was just like, I hated every aspect of coming to the table and asking. It felt like I had my head bowed, but at the same time, someone, and why I will get to community and why that's helpful. Someone told me, well, you are working, like you are part of your house, like what you're doing is enabling him to work, so don't feel bad about asking and having the conversation about money, like you need it. Like, and that was what's agreed on. When you said I'm staying home and you're going to be working, there's an understanding there, and that should be clear. And if it's not, I advise people to be very clear when you're talking about this with your partner. How are you going to handle that? You know, because I think that's really, really important. Was there anything else somebody wanted to, in terms of the cons that hit home for you that you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, I think that it's funny that, like, you know, because Victoria, you and I know each other. That this is probably why we connect. I have the same pain points. Like, mine is the loss of income, and mine is also the sadness, depression, rage. And like, I have the anger, and like, I think a lot of moms know the mommy anger, and like, mine, it though isn't towards Coda. It ends up being towards my husband. And I see this a lot happening too. So, I struggle with this all the time. It seemed to have happened like when I got pregnant, but something happens, whether it's between that life change, these realizations, being in a situation that's very triggering, which is just creating a child, and then it brings up your whole childhood, because now you're thinking about your role, and then you have to think about the roles that your parents played, and your brain doesn't even realize it's doing this compare and contrast game, and your partner gets rolled up into that. And so like, I am working on it and have been working on it, and you have to seek, you know, this is a very privileged conversation, but like, if you can seek professional help, or you can, you know, do whatever you can to really gain a perspective to understand, like, what is this message that your anger is trying to tell you, and why does it keep telling you that? Because when I'm in my right mind, like when I am angry and in a very fight or flight kind of a mode, I feel like I'm very justified in getting so angry at him for whatever it is I think he's doing, which later is always so petty, right? But it's the deeper feelings that you're having that usually are probably associated with what we all talked about. The negatives you've associated with the role that you're now in as a stay-at-home mom. And when I'm in my right mind, I know he doesn't deserve it. And so how do I reconcile these things? I mean, it's a struggle to this day. I'm currently like struggling with it. It's so hard. And then the loss of income is like, you know, I'm really passionate about speaking to women and helping them understand how to find love when we were never taught how to find love. We were taught how to find jobs, right? And so I could do all that for free, but there's a pressure I put on myself that he puts no pressure on me to do this, but I put on myself to find and speak to and talk to and market. And, and there's all these coaches now on social media that, are all competing with each other. And it's a very it's a deep world you can dive into and really beat yourself up and try to grab some financial, security out of it or whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? Or just weird, value, right? I just want to get the money and say, oh yeah, I'm doing a job,
Yeah.
So for me, even though it's you and I have the same issues, they're presenting totally differently. And I think that's the thing too, is that even when you speak to other stay-at-home moms that have all these same type of issues, we all have the same type of issues on paper, but when you really hear the story, there's so much more that is a blessing that comes out of it. And I know we're going to go into pros, but I would have never realized these things. I probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to work on these things if I wasn't held to it every single day. And there's something beautiful in that it wouldn't be coming out as ugly as it is. It wouldn't be coming out for me to deal with it.
Yeah. And your child would be better for it, right? Because it's in a way, you're kind of, I wouldn't say forced, but the situation presents itself for you to dig a little deeper and heal some things that maybe you didn't think that, you were still dealing with. And it all in all, it makes you a better person. And I wanted to talk about how this has influenced your parenting style, whether you may have thought of what it was going to be prior to having kids but I think you touched on it, is that we kind of do this comparison and contrast in our minds, sometimes actively and sometimes it's present. And then you realize, wait a minute, I think I know where this is coming from. I'm trying not to be, or I'm trying to be my mom or my dad or whatever that might be, and how that affects your parenting style. But speaking of parenting style and the pros of being stay-at-home moms, again, this is the research. It says, that I'm reading from, says it increases in child school performance. Child has less stress and aggression. That's because we have it. Child has less stress and aggression. I love that one. I was like, of course they do. Because on the other side of that is the parent may have levels of sadness, depression, and anger. Greater involvement in child's day-to-day life and feeling good about the choice to stay home. So here's the other aspect I thought about this and this discussion. There are people who are listening to this that are stay-at-home moms and are like, I love it. I don't have any wishes to do anything else. I don't know what these ladies are talking about. I find every moment just refreshing, and there's times to relax. And I know that sounds bananas to the three of us here, but I have to tell you, in doing research for this, and I went through so many groups of stay-at-home moms, and there was one woman who said, I'm just confused as to why everyone on this page is constantly talking about other things that they want to do and making time, and everyone's trying to make time to do something else. Like, I just want to be with my kid. And I read that and I thought, oh, I get it. I respect it. Just today I ran into someone that I had met at a friend's kid's birthday party. And this is her fourth child. Her older children are like teenagers, and one might be in like their 20s. And now she has a 2-year-old. And I was asking, like, so, are you thinking about putting her in a day program or something? She's like, no. It's like, and to me, I was like, no. I was like, no, I have no plans of her doing that until it's time for like pre-K. And I was thinking in my head, I was like, I don't know if I could have waited that long for her to not go to some type of day program for me. And I love my daughter. I love her so much. But I just couldn't. I was just like, so she's just home. And she's like, yeah. And I thought, okay. but so there is that aspect too. So there are people who feel really good about that choice. There's never a struggle of, did I do the right thing or not?
Yes.
And I'm not saying that's what we're saying here. It seems like everyone's still like, I don't know if you would change your decision to be a stay-at-home mom at this point. It just sounds that, for us, just for anyone who's listening out there, there's still stuff that we have that's left undone, that we still want to tap into and feel like that we can still be super moms and super women and do other things, and that's okay. But I just wanted to put the pros out there, because I just don't want anyone listening to this and going, yeah, no, that's not for me.
But also, if they do, more power to them.
Yeah. But it's okay.
But I mean, I do. Yeah, I will say about those pros, like, honestly, so I wouldn't change anything. Despite our conversation so far, I wouldn't change anything. I really, really love being a stay-at-home mom, just for the simple fact that, like, I have never done this before. Mm-hmm. And like, similar to you, it's like, I've been working since I was 14. I'm now 43. I worked till I was 42. So like 13 to 42 is already somebody's whole, like some of our parents, like whole career. Right. So like, I'm so glad to switch gears and to have these realizations that I do think is patriarchal and capitalist programming. I really think that a lot of what makes me feel bad about, like just not being good at this and not giving myself the space and time and grace to acclimate to something that I already know logically, like mentally, I know is more complicated than I thought it was. I know it's more work than I thought it was. Like, and so because I have these like preconceived notions that come from living in this crazy world that we all live in, of even if you're not in a capitalist country, like this whole global economy is based on capitalism, right? And like, and who can make more and do more and all that stuff. And so like, I think we're all programmed, no matter where you're living, to think this way and put value in things that have to do with like, power, domination, colonizing, like all these, like, all these things that like, it's funny because like we're a whole panel of women of color in some way, I'm assuming, right? And so, and at the same time, we all, I think, have adopted this, this 1950s history in our mind of like what a stay-at-home mom should be. And like, that wasn't my 1950s. If I watch those shows from the 1950s, nobody there looks like me, So like, but somehow I've adopted this thinking that like, I should derive my value from those types of systems. And so finding your own way, but then also finding other women, which is like all of them. Every stay-at-home mom that I talk to has gone through the same thing, even the ones who embrace it and love it. And I have a friend who I would say, I don't know what she would say, is excellent at being a stay-at-home mom. I really admire a lot of the things that she does and the system she puts in place and how effortless it seems to her that like, she can walk around with a baby here and a baby on here and still do all the stuff she needs to do. And her house is clean, relatively, like mommy clean, but it's not a disaster by any means. And still in her vulnerability, she'll just share that like, like, but I love this and it's okay. And like, she just happens to be good at it. I think because she's not really as hung up as I am. And a lot of women I know are about these preconceived notions that we had. So I think that a huge plus is like, I'm an extrovert, it's different than Kendra, where it's like, I will find friends when I need help, even if I don't like asking for help. And so like, that's necessary to find who you want to hang out with and where you can get any type of support and, and embracing every woman, no matter who they are, they're all going to have a story to tell that you're going to be able to help yourself from. It's like, and women, every woman I've met is more than happy to share their story. And so that's what's great too, is that I don't think I've ever met a stay-at-home mom that was like, no, I don't want to tell you what my experience was like. No, we're all dying.
Yeah, I was about to
tell
say,
each other
we're all like
what our
starving
experience
for
was like.
community anyway. Like whether you're introverted, extroverted, you're like, there you are.
We need it for survival.
Yes. And so it's like, I don't think, basically my whole thing, I don't think it's also not hard for the women who find it easier just because they may not have those hangups. I think it's also hard for them. And then I feel like I could learn a lot from them, just watching them and just seeing like the things that don't hinder them, like they hinder me during the day. Like, why am I upset having to clean the same tiny little pair of pants for the third time this week? Why am I upset about that? It's like, did I not know? I do know. So it's like, why am I upset about that? And then my brain starts making stuff up. Oh, it's a wasting soap and water and all this stuff. I don't care about that stuff. Like, I'm just making up stuff to be mad about because like this capitalism has taught me that like I need to like be like upset that I'm doing this task that's below me, or I'm wasting something that costs money and all these things. They don't matter. They don't matter.
Yeah,
you know?
Kendra, really, I see that you really felt that about the beneath you thing, that aspect. Tell me what I'm seeing. I saw you like, yes, that makes sense. Why?
Yeah, no, I think there are a lot of tasks like that. There's part of me that enjoys like keeping the house clean and like just having a nice space to be in all day, and like cleaning the dishes and doing laundry and all that. But then, you know, I got my bachelor's, I got my master's, I worked as a therapist for a long time. And it feels kind of strange to like I never focused on those tasks, and those tasks were not that important to me before. And there was a lot of time to get them done before having a kid too. So it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't something I had to do all day long and try to feel like I had to stay on top of. So it is a big, like, I guess, perspective switch to see that as valuable, and to see and to feel proud that I'm doing these things, and to feel like it is like part of a bigger picture, and it is part of like us supporting each other as a family. Yeah, I think it took a while to get there, and kind of integrate it into like my lifestyle and my job.
Yeah. Well, like Kendra, okay, so I kind of have like a comment that so I've heard this from women that like, so you've gotten a master's, and then there's got to be a part of you that's been programmed in by academia to say, you're just wasting that degree, right? But the truth is, your child is now getting a education from a woman who is educated to a level that men didn't used to get educated to. And so like, and a woman of color. And so like, this is the stuff that it's like, I feel like, and the thing none of us have touched on yet is like, but it mentioned it in those pros, is like, I get to decide how my child is educated and their emotional regulation and like things that my mother with a high school diploma could not have given me those tools. I think that's the hugest pro.
Yep.
The hugest pro is to be able to like be so thankful to my partner that he affords me the opportunity to do these things. And then he can be thankful to me that our child gets that kind of, you know, master's degree level parenting.
It's true, because they're with us all day. For example, in my household, we speak French and English. So one of the things I really wanted for her was to pick up on French. And I see how, like, if I was flying and I was doing, you know, what I was doing before, that would not have happened so seamlessly. I mean, she's fluent now. And yes, you know, and that's most like when she went to, we found a day program where they speak French for her. It's like a French immersion situation. But she went in there understanding and able to communicate. And I thought that is the moment for me where I thought, oh my gosh, I did it. Because for me, that's legacy.
That's amazing.
Because for me, that's carrying the women before me. Because I learned because my grandmother really wanted to make sure that I had this language. All the stuff that she's left behind for future generations is all in French. My mom, who's not here with me anymore, And I know that she would be like overjoyed that this is being carried down, because that is culture. So I know time afforded me to do that. That afforded me to do that. And then I see also, you know, my husband jokes all the time that my daughter's all him in the face, but all me in personality. But I see the best parts of us in her that she's getting because of time that she has with us. That is not to say that if we were both working that she still wouldn't get some of those things, but I see that the time that's been afforded to us, they've really soaked in, and I get to the fact that I get to see so many parts of her day and see how it's like how she's evolving is a gift. I am thankful that I have the privilege truly to be with her this, you know, all this time. And then, you know, for a lot of us in this age group who may be one and dones for many different reasons, whether it's, you know, our eggs or by choice or whatever it is, it makes it even more precious, the privilege that I have to sit with her and be home with her. Because I may not get another opportunity, and if I do, it's like a blessing, you know. But I think about that too on the tough days where I go, you're not gonna get this time back. You're not gonna get this time back. So just settle into something today to bring you back to being in full gratitude that you get the honor to do this. So right here is going to be our conclusion of part 1 of just kind of how we got here. And then we can't wait to give you part 2 so you can kind of hear what the tools, the resources that we've been able to tap into that have made our experiences that much more richer, and that we can't wait to share with you so that you can have them too. And now I'd like to invite you to leave a review. Let me know what you thought about this episode. We love hearing from you. And don't forget to follow and subscribe at New Mommy at 40 on Instagram and Facebook, or go to the website newmommyat40.com. Take care of yourselves and each other.